Good to see you again. And if you were with me last week, you'll know we left with an element of disaster hanging over the young makers of Izinkomo, because somebody had said there was a tokolosh, and three little people ran in different directions and upset all the hours of hard work of making their little clay Izinkomo, and they were broken. So Jabu was very strict, and he was going to have to do something about it. But he still insisted that they went back to the cattle kraal. They put the roof on properly so no lions could get in for the ones that were still all right, and to make sure that those who were still all right would in the night eat the mealie stalks that they put on top. They would then make manure, and then they must come in the next day, take out the manure and put them on the vegetables to feed the village. Very specific and very much Jabu. Jabu, always the leader, very disciplined, carried out what had to be done, and yes, a very interesting character. Prune, on the other hand, Prune was a dreamer. He wanted flowers in his garden. He wanted everything. He loved butterflies and he loved antlions. Prune and I were very close friends when we were little kids. I've got lots of photographs of us together. And my friends in Escordini would remember Prune and Lalan, that wonderful Scottish nurse who looked after my father's clinic in Cholocho. And she worked in a tin hut in Cholocho heat. And she saved people from cholera, from heart attack, from cerebral malaria, from typhoid, all these awful things that you can get in that area, or could certainly at that time. And she went on doing it for the rest of her life. So there you have the characters starting to build up. And now we go back to where we were in the actual narrative of the story. And if you excuse me, I'm just going to quietly put my glasses on, because otherwise I find it too hard to see at my advanced age. Now Jabu had an errand. He had to take the broken Zikomo to the ancestors and seek their forgiveness. Interesting. All the broken pieces were in the calabash, so Jabu could take them to the Kova. Now the Kova was the owl who watched over the ancestors' spirits. He gently covered them with dry grass so that he could carry them back to the Nkoko village. He couldn't mend the broken ones, but he would ask the Nkoko to release their spirits so they could be put back in the ground. In time, their mud would make more cattle. Carol had heard stories about Nkoko and Amalodzi and Togolosh. They were scary stories. Mum said she must shut her ears if they talked about these things. She thought about how she'd been frightened when she scared Jabu and Prune about the Togolosh. And she wondered what the ancestors did to the cows and the calves and the bulls, because they came back strong and shining and their teats didn't break off anymore. But the ancestors sometimes didn't want to see the cows, and Jabu had to take special presents. Today, he would tell the story of the broken cattle and the Tokolosh, and the ancestors would be very angry. Today, they'd have to collect many marulas, those little stone fruits that we all loved as children and which made the elephants drunk. Interesting, love those marulas. Makes a wonderful drink too called amarula, which if you haven't tried it, I do suggest a great aperitif. The amarulas would be payment for the ancestors. Prune would help them pick the marulas. Carol wondered a lot about Prune. Sometimes he was helping, like marula picking helping and making mud helping, and sometimes not helping, like not helping making Izinkomo. She wondered if it would make a difference if Prune was called by his real name, Vusimuzi. But Prune had stuck. She wondered about these things all the time, but she did learn to speak Sindebele, and the boys learned to speak English. When it got too hot, Carol went home to do painting with Mum, and Prune went to fetch more thorns for the next day and to help sweep the clinic for Nysa. Jabu went to make a ceremony to the Umkoko in a village many miles away, and it would give him time for some important thinking on the way. Jabu liked important thinking, but he knew he had to be quick so he could get back to his home for the favorite part of the day. He pushed more grass into the calabash to hold the broken bits tight and started a slow run down the road behind the native department. His father, Nkanyiso, waved at him running past and called out, "Hey, Jabulan!" But Jabu saw only the road to the Umkoko. Nkanyiso watched and wondered. As he left the small town of Cholocho, Jabu moved off the tar strips onto the dirt path because the tar was too hot for his bare feet. He did the slow run all the way to the next village to make sure he wouldn't be too tired to get there. Then he would fast run past and then again slow run till the sun blinded his eyes and he knew time was short. After many more villages, he had at last reached the Umkoko village. It wasn't as big as Cholocho, but it was more important to the Matabele people. All the houses were made of sticks, mud, and thatch, which the white people called Polandaga. There were 23 grass huts in a circle with a big space in the middle for dancing, for cooking, for eating. Right next to the big space was the grass hut with 2 smoke holes, because it was very long and very important. Jabu fast ran into the village to find the Umkoko. He sat on his heels just outside the big grass hut with 2 smoke holes and stared at the entrance for any sign of movement. It was the custom. But nobody came to see why he was still sitting, waiting. The Umkoko were not there today. So after a long time of waiting, he stood up. Then he bent double to walk through the low grass entrance very quietly, holding out his calabash towards the Umkoko's owl, Korva. Even though the owl's back was turned, Korva would still turn his head right round to look at Jabu from the corner with no blinking eyes. Because it was tradition, Jabu knew he had to tell Korva everything, and Korva would know if he left anything out. Sometimes it was worse talking to Korva because of the no blinking eyes than it was talking to the Umkoko. So Jabu talked. He told the whole story, from Prune bringing the right mud to the fright of the Tokolosh and the breaking of the cattle. He kept forgetting, then remembering, then worrying that it was taking too long, then saying something. Korva blinked. Jabu turned, ready to go. Korva screamed his 2 notes, and Jabu felt wings smack the back of his head as the owl flashed past into the still bright sun. Jabu's heart was in his mouth. The Umkoko were very angry. He started to run fast because he was frightened, fast because he had to be back before the sun dropped from the sky. The growls of hunters and the snorts and squeals of the hunted were making terrifying pictures in his head as the night closed in so quickly. He ran even faster. Exhausted, he flopped, panting at his father's feet, and dipped his chwala, a bowl of cooked cornmeal, into the boiling pot of meat and gravy. This was the best time of the day, eating and hearing the stories he loved. Every time he listened, he learned, and he remembered new stories of King Mzilikazi and of his son, King Lobengula. And most important of all, of Mchan, his own Babamkhulu, the most revered Induna in the whole Matabele kingdom. Wonderful learning about all these cultures and trying to put them together in a way we can all identify and enjoy. Good to be with you. Hopefully see you again, this time next week with a very different story.